Today, we are very fortunate to have on the Hunt Harvest Health podcast the brothers behind Lathrop and Sons. For those that have not heard of Lathrop and Sons, it's a company that kind of specializes in getting people into the most beneficial, comfortable boots for their specific foot shape. And for us hunters, we depend on the health and functionality of our feet. This is extremely beneficial and a super important service that I think can help when deciding on what boots you're going to go into the mountains in. So I'm really excited just to geek out and talk with a couple of experts in the field of podiatry and boot fitting as well as boot making now. So Stephen and James, how you guys doing?
I'm doing well. How are you doing, Ryan?
We're doing great this morning.
Hi, guys.
Good. Thanks for having us on. Yeah, it's really great that you asked us to be part of this.
Yeah, absolutely. So first off, I kind of wanted to get a little bit of background from each of you guys. Now, you're brothers. Now, you guys are, what state are you guys working out of? Where are you living?
We're out of Illinois, southeastern Illinois, about an hour and 45 minutes southwest of Indianapolis.
Okay, yeah, perfect. Yeah, so you guys, I'm guessing you're whitetail hunters. You guys probably get after the whitetail a little bit over there?
Absolutely, yeah, sure we big do. Time.
Yeah,
that's really our passion.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, we spend a lot of time out putting food plots out and just working the ground just to make sure that our time out there is really enjoyable, not only for us, but for the kids, too. Yeah. And my wife started. Yeah, Carrie, James's wife, she's quite an accomplished bow hunter as well. And she does. She gets after it. She had some really great success this year. But, James awesome. Talking about our food plots we put out, we don't just do the food plots. I want to bring something up here, Ryan, and I know we want to talk about boots, but a lot of guys look at a whitetail hunter and you see a lot of stuff on TV sitting on this big green field and hunting these, golf courses. I've seen that stuff. The Midwest is completely different. And we actually go in and we manicure our woods. We'll go in and literally cut down timber to create browse for these animals and create bedding areas for them. And Illinois kind of got hit there a couple of years ago with a disease, and it was pretty rampant. It went through, and we lost a lot of deer. And gosh, for several years, we just would not shoot any does, and it's been a real struggle getting our herd back. But we're working hard at it. We're conservationists as well.
Yeah, wow, that's interesting. Yeah, that's completely different than us boys out west and how we do it. But I've always looked at whitetail. I haven't done a whole lot of whitetail hunting in my years. I've done a little bit of mountain hunting for them, but like you said, like what we've seen on TV, it is completely different. I know a lot of guys out here will kind of poo-poo whitetail, but, I think anybody who's done it, everybody I've talked to who's done it, all of a sudden they get this real big, a huge respect for guys that can get out there and do it. And it's just a different game. You guys, like you talked about, you're doing food plots and getting the bedding areas all dialed in and just kind of figuring it out. I know patience is one of those things that I don't probably have enough of to do what you guys do, but
you could do it. The real joy, and as you go along, and what I'm getting ready to say, it can start to wear on you, and it can start to take a little bit of fun out of it.
Yeah.
When you start to target one specific animal.
Yeah.
And you have a history with that critter for 3 or 4 years, and you hunt that animal specifically, you're in the game. And I'm not going to say it's really trophy hunting. I guess he's a trophy, but it's really more of self-satisfaction to outsmart that animal on his turf. But it can wear on you, man. You can put a lot of pressure on yourself, but that's the extreme that James and I have kind of pushed where we're at now. But once we kind of got to have fun with it too, I guess.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see how, from going to just shooting any buck that comes by to actually learning one deer and, seeing it year after year and just kind of putting all your efforts into that one deer. That's got to be a pretty big sense of accomplishment once you've got that, once you're able to harvest that buck, if you are.
Yeah, it's exciting. There's no doubt about that. That's kind of the pinnacle of it.
Now, do you guys ever get out west and do any mountain hunting out here in any of these western states?
Sure, we do. We get out to Colorado as often as we possibly can.
Okay. You guys chasing muleys or elk or a little bit of everything?
We go after elk. I mean, that's just something that I think we've all kind of...
That's what we love to do.
That's what we love to do.
These big, beastly animals. We love to hear them scream. And
very majestic.
And completely different for a couple Midwest boys that were, started bow hunting at the age of what? You were 15. I was 14, 15. And, you get to go out west and you see that first elk, you just can't believe it. And then you walk up on the first one that you ever shot and you're just awestruck, like, you've got to be kidding me,
I can imagine. Yeah, it is.
It's unreal. It's a big thing. I mean, for us, we can walk out the door and within 15 minutes be sitting in a tree stand or a blind hunting a whitetail and have fun. And for us to take the trip, it's an expedition for us to be able to do something like this. And we don't live there, so we have to figure it out. And when you finally do, kind of things start working in your behalf, in your direction. Mm-hmm. It's really exciting.
Now, I'm guessing for some Eastern boys like yourself, it probably takes a little bit when you come out here. You probably have stuck to an area and learned it, and year to year, you're probably getting a little bit
figure out.
Well, it does, and I don't know. I'm gonna say this, and James can interject here. I think the biggest thing for a Midwest guy, and it's not everyone, but you have to push a little bit. Mm-hmm. Past your comfort zone in order to get into that area. It's a little intimidating when you get out there in the mountains. Okay, you're going to park your truck, throw your pack on, you take off. You go 2.5 miles. Man, do we really go 4 miles? Because what if we shoot one? How are we going to get that out of here?
You just have to make the mindset
that's what you're going to do,
and that's what we try to do. Just like everybody else, you get it out, push as hard as you possibly can, and
at the end of the day, if you sometimes you come up empty-handed, the difference I think probably between whitetail and that is you're just exerting so much energy out west, and obviously we live at 500 feet, so we're kind of the underdog going into this. So, the amount of training, kudos to everyone who's training out west and doing that. But, go from 500 feet, you can train all day long, but you get at 10,000 feet, you're just sucking air through a straw for the first 3 days. It's just pure hell on.
We're actually in the same boat. We're a couple of coasties over here. We're at about 500 feet, but we do get into the mountains quite a bit, so we've been acclimated. But yeah, I can only imagine. I haven't been to Illinois, but I'm imagining not a whole lot of big snow-capped steep peaks.
No. We got to go down into
beautiful country.
If we go south about 2.5 hours, we're in Shawnee National Forest, and down there's some big hills and cliffs. I used to do a lot of rock climbing and rappelling down in there, so used to spend a lot of time going up and down the hills there. It's nothing like the mountains by any means, but it certainly is a lot of fun. And
yeah, absolutely.
Well, that makes me think of a story. I don't hunt, but we used to do a lot of backcountry skiing, and it reminds me of a story. We were in Salt Lake at Alta, and if you've ever... we're used to skiing big mountains here, right? I grew up in Montana and we lived in Washington, so we're used to skiing big mountains. And I was on the lift one day with these 2 teenage boys, and they were from New Hampshire or something. And we get on the lift, and I think it was their very first run, and the lift literally goes straight up over this cliff. You're going right up over this cliff, and these guys go, do you ski these kind of mountains all the time? And they're like,
yeah.
And I go, yeah, like, what do you mean? You don't? Like, this is how you ski. And they're like, we're from, like, New Hampshire. We've never even seen mountains like this, and this lift is about to drop them off on probably, like, the steepest mountain they've ever skied in their whole
double
life.
Diamond, yeah.
No, they're used to skiing ice fields in New Hampshire, right? You get used to what you know, and, learning something new is a bit scary, but...
You kind of mentioned, the intimidation and getting into the 10,000 foot. Now, I got a question because it seems to be in a lot of people's minds, that intimidation factor of coming out west. The elevation. Have you had any problems, issues?
Yeah, I've experienced it a couple times. I actually, you don't care if I say this, I watched it hit James once too, and that was really in the first years, and it was just fly up to the top and start pitching camp. And this is when we first started, just truck hunt camping.
Yeah.
And we didn't have a lot of success, but we got into some elk doing that. I just remember one time we were jumped out of that rig and we were just, asses and elbows putting this pack or pulling our packs out and putting up our TP and, doing all this stuff, just, adrenaline rush. Man, we're here to hunt. And I remember kind of looking back at James, and he just kind of looked puny, I said, here, you need to take this. And it was like a meclizine or something for motion sickness. And a little later, he's my brother, and we're with a couple buddies, and I hear him just kind of go, I feel better. And I turn around. Well, that's what had happened. We just blew up there so fast and attacked it that it bit him. But he doesn't. You don't really get affected by it that much.
That actually was the only time I ever had any problem with it. I think I've kind of felt a little bit on the claustrophobic side. The first time I went out, and Stephen wasn't with me the first time I went out elk hunting. My old roommate was. And our oldest brother Robert was with us. I just remember sitting there in the tent at night and just feeling kind of like I had a sheet wrapped around me, heavy, and I was just antsy, wanting to get up and move around, and I never had any headache really or anything like that. And nowadays, I don't have anything like that happen, but I'm a lot more active too than what I was then.
Right.
I mean, I was pretty young, and I'd just gotten married and was kind of settling into a house with a wife and kids and kind of sitting on the couch a little bit, that kind of stuff,
You know what it takes to get into a hunt.
And then now you get out and
you really get.
I work out every day and so.
Yeah, but I
feel a lot better now.
So I had that episode, and it was 15 with James, and I was in good shape, and it kind of bit me up there, and I just don't know exactly what it was that triggered it, but we climbed up to that peak that morning. About midday, we just arrived in
10,000 feet or higher, huh? Maybe
was right below 10, wasn't it, Jay?
Yeah, it was about 10.5, something like that.
And we hit that, and it was kind of a gasser getting up there. There was no trail to hike, and it was steep, and we didn't have a lot of water up there, so we prepared ourselves.
Yeah, but you were also recovering from surgery.
So it could have had something to do with it too.
Yeah.
And anyway, I got up to the top, and he just kind of said, "Let me look around up here." And I said, "I'm just going to sit and take a little break." And kind of saw little speckles in my eyes and didn't think it was a big deal. And I felt great then. It gave me 15 minutes. Heck, we hiked the rest of that spine all the way out. Found where we were going to pitch camp and hunted that evening, came back to camp, just chilled out. They kind of, pumped to go the next morning. And that next morning we got up and wasn't a whole lot going on. And we decided to tear down and drop back out of it, because this unit, if you literally went 3 miles, you were at the next road. And we climbed off of that peak, came down, and I mean, it was an effort just coming down. I mean, it really, really hit me heavy. When we got to the truck, I threw my pack and my boat in, and I just wanted to go lay under that tree. And he said, oh, you need to eat. And what ended up happening was I was getting altitude sickness. My appetite was gone. I didn't have any energy. Yeah, it was a bummer. I had a friend that's a physician recommend that I take some Diamox before, which I didn't do, but I took it with me, and James kind of gave me a pep talk, said, come on, if we have to just drive around the unit to check stuff out, we'll do that. And about an hour later, I'm really feeling, spunky again, and I actually had taken one of those, what were those, that powder that we mixed. It was Wilderness Athlete. It was
like an electrolyte drink, and
I forget which one it was. It really worked great. It's energy and focus. I took one of those, and I feel like it was helping me. And I looked at James and I said, "Hey," I said, our buddy Dave, our physician buddy Dave, gave me a prescription for that. I said, "Do you think that I should go ahead and take that?" And he looked at me like, "Duh. You might want to do that, Stephen." And I took one, and it was a couple hours later. I mean, I just felt like $1,000,000. So yeah, it kind of works on you. Kind of a long-winded story, but it works on you.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, I've heard a lot of horror stories from guys, and it does seem like a lot of guys coming east these days. So, and I think Colorado has kind of been a destination, and coming west from the east. And I think the destination of Colorado, man, that is such night and day from what you're used to. And I think kind of easing into it and getting acclimated a little bit, might help you. But yeah, it's happened to the best of the best up there. So.
You actually ask people's opinion about this stuff that do the same thing or have the same interest, And I got to be honest, you almost feel kind of ashamed because you're a strapping guy that works out, and he's going out on his hunt. He's got the best gear, the best boots on his feet, and he gets up there and he feels like he's got something that holds you back like that. So you kind of ask some of these guys, "Hey, have you ever had that happen to you?" And you start talking around, and you'd be shocked how many people have had, that nausea, the knots in your stomach, and you just can't sleep, that sleeplessness that James described. I mean, it's the real deal. It's serious stuff.
Yeah, and it's not one of those things that you can really train for. It doesn't matter how good a shape you are going into the season. None of that matters. And you're right. I've talked to guys that experienced guys that have maybe hunted a state like mine where you get up to 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 feet on occasion and no issues at all. But then once you get up there a little higher, up into the 10 and 12 and shoot 13 some places there in Colorado and Utah, it's night and day. It's a different world, and it just hits them and knocks them out of a hunt. So one of the reasons why I was really excited to get you guys on here is I feel you guys are just experts in your field, podiatry and foot care and fitting and everything boot related. And that's something that I'm super interested in. I know a lot of the younger hunters, they ask me all the time, what are those pieces? What are the most important pieces of gear when you're going out on a hunt, right? It's kind of always been a question. And I hear some people say, maybe it's your backpack, but boot is always in the top two. And I think it's number one because, man, I don't care. I don't care who you are. You could be this chiseled, rock solid, CrossFit going, you beast of a guy who goes into the mountains fit. You've trained. Your shooting is just spot on. Everything is good. Your nutrition is right, and yet your feet get hammered or destroyed, or you have some type of an issue because you're in a poor fitting boot. And it just levels you. It takes you out of the mountains. And I've seen it over and over and over. And I've seen guys that get these massive heel blisters. And it's just one of the biggest topics as far as, what is the most important thing when you go on a backcountry hunt for guys coming out west, hitting these mountains? And I just, from personal experience and guys that I've hunted with or hiked with, even just the amount of issues that go on in our world, as far as foot related, boot related issues, it's incredible. So I think I feel totally comfortable saying, as far as when people ask me, what is the number one piece of gear that you got to start with, you got to invest in, you want to get it right, and that's the boot. Because everything else can be worked with, but if you don't have a good fitting boot and your feet go bad somewhere on a hunt, if you're 10 miles in or whatever, man, that's painful, and that it can just wreck you. So
you can go buy the best optics, the best spotting scope, but seriously, what good does it do you if you have an abnormality on the back of your heel? I'm going to give you an example. You have an abnormality on the back of your heel. Maybe you live out west, but you've never been on a hike. Mm-hmm. You realize that some of our clientele are those kind of guys. They've never been on a hike. They've never put on a pair of backpacking boots like we fit for people. And those boots, when the fitment process is done right, you don't experience near the problems you do when you just grab something and throw it on your foot. When they start getting into that category of boot, that's when all these problems rear their ugly little face. A shoe that doesn't have a lot of stability. So, no, I completely agree with you. So they go out and buy the best pack, the best gear, all the best sleeping bags and optics. I mean, my God, if you can't get up the side of the mountain because you've got silver dollar blisters on the back of your heel.
Yeah, it's not going to help you when you're sitting on the side of the trail and you can't go any farther. What are you
going to do?
That's right. Absolutely. So I guess
look through your binoculars at the bull elk, walk over the side of the ridge,
and you can't go after him.
And we know how often that happens. A big old bull just walks by. I mean, come on, it just never happens that way. So you got to be able to get after it, and definitely, foot care and having the right boot is one of those keys, and one of those things that I refuse to skimp on and refuse to take lightly, because it's just extremely important for what we do. So I guess how did you guys come to be in the business that you're in? James, maybe you could kind of give us a little background as far as how you guys got to where you're at.
Well, really, it kind of started right when I think I was 15. I think Stephen was probably 15 or 14 too. Our father's he's a podiatrist. He's a foot doctor. Stephen and I are both podorthists. We make orthotics for his office.
Okay.
And we started working in his facility, just doing, vacuuming, doing stuff like that, and
cheap labor.
Yeah. Well, it was kind of like this. His philosophy was, if you're going to sit at the table and eat, you can work and put into it. So we got in there and started learning how to do some of these things, and when we got into making orthotics, and he taught us how to do that. He taught us how to stand up against a grinder and bevel edge on these types of inserts, make little adjustments. And that was, Steve and I are both, I would consider us very good, quick learners with our hands. You show us how to do something and we can replicate it pretty easy. And so we kind of stuck with it and started doing that. And over the years, doing all this and taking care of helping our father with the patients, we kind of got into working on our own boots and shoes for hunting purposes. And when you're fabricating orthotic, there's all kinds of different types of materials there, and they're there for a reason. Some mold, some kind of have some insulation properties to it, and so on and so forth. And so that's kind of how we drifted on into this type of business, and basically kind of went on from there for the most.
Yeah.
So your father was, how long was your father a podiatrist, or is he still doing that?
Dad is still, he's still practicing.
Still practicing.
He says he's 74. It seems like he's been 74 for the last 5 years. And he's very passionate about it. And you talk about us fitting boots to people's feet. That passion, we have it as well. And we were taught by yours truly. He's very passionate. So we take each fitting, each person that calls in, and whether they're asking us a question or whether they're going through a custom boot system with us and having us evaluate their feet, having our father set in and evaluate their feet and really develop a plan for them, the passion is present every time. And we really want to make sure. We kind of take offense if somebody is having a problem. We kind of feel bad. If we have to do adjustments, we kind of like, hate that. You know, we're very passionate about what we do, and we take to heart, just like Hillary, your patients that you deal with, you treat them just like they're your own, right?
Yep. Yep.
So, you know, when you're helping somebody out and they come to you for guidance, you really take that to heart. And I think that's what really, the people that have experienced it and can understand, they can feel that vibe coming from us. They have a great result out of their fitting, and that's what makes Lathrop and Sons the company. We really take the time to do it, and we've been told that, you know, there's not a lot of people that do that this day and age.
There isn't. No,
there's not, and I know just from some of the buddies that I have that have called you guys in the past and talked to you guys on the phone. You know, I've got a few guys that have done that and gone through the process of what you guys do, and you know, super happy. And one of the first things they say is you guys will sit and talk. I had a guy tell me you guys talked with him for, it must have been well over an hour. He felt it was an hour and a half.
You know what, we do, but the thing is that shows your passion for what you do.
It is.
When a guy comes to you with a problem and he wants to ask you about this, it's what it takes to get the job done right for the person. And by doing it that way, that person is now educated on the process and he can accurately represent what you are to the next person.
Right.
That is about.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I kind of can relate to that with what my wife does. You know, she's got a passion for helping people as well, being a naturopathic physician, and you know, she spends that extra time and care, and I think patients really see it, and they can see her passion and how she takes the time to research and help people and actually get down to the root of the problem versus you know, just here, take a pill or here's a quick fix, just get through it and get out of my office type thing. So I can kind of relate to that. What you guys are doing by taking time and figuring out, you know, what the core problem is and what the best boot and best fit would be, and if there's anything that you guys can do to help them, I get it for sure.
Very important.
So what?
It's very important. One thing, it is very important that mentality is utilized for not just people that are going through our custom boot system process, but it's for people that are wanting to just buy a pair of boots. There are people out there that cannot afford to go through a custom boot fitting process,
sure,
but still want to come to somebody with the knowledge to help them at least to get a boot to fit their foot correctly.
Ryan, it even goes a step further than that. The other day, I had a guy that just called in. I think he was just looking at wanting to figure out what kind of a shoe that he needed. I think it was actually a work boot of sorts. Mm-hmm. And he had heard that we do this type of fitting, and we're very knowledgeable on it. And I spent about 15 minutes just kind of talking about different types of shoes that would be appropriate for the type of issue that he was having.
I wanted to say that, you know, you guys already know a little bit of my personal history with my feet.
Yeah.
But, maybe I'll share that just a little bit. So when I was, I guess I was born with a defect in my foot where I had what's called a calcaneal navicular coalition. That's
Sure.
a long name, sounds complicated, but my right foot, basically my heel bone and my arch bone were fused. And so I didn't get the joint in between that really allows for you to have a spring in your step. And that area where you get a lot of shock absorption and, you think of jumpers, like they're jumping. I didn't get that in my right foot. I had a bone there. So in my I had pain in my legs my whole childhood and everything, my leg, but they just told my mom it was growing pains and just to give me warm milk. And so I would get these like excruciating pains in my right lower leg, but they, kids have growing pains and we just do that. And then I was a dancer and then I got older in my teens and it was literally like my foot just wouldn't move certain ways at all. And they told me I had a fallen arch. No one ever actually took an x-ray of my feet, which is crazy. But so as I got into my early 20s, I was waiting tables a lot and I always had foot pain. That wasn't an issue. I had that my whole life, but I had horrible hip pain. My hip pain was so bad that if I worked an 8-hour shift standing on my feet, if I sat down on my shift, I would not be able to get up. That's how bad my hips were. And I was like 20, 21. So I finally convinced someone to take x-rays of my feet. They did. They found it, sent me to a specialist. There's actually people that know how to fix those, how to take the bone out. And I got kind of a fake joint, like a fatty tissue joint. But my dilemma was always shoes. And no matter how much so I did a lot of physical therapy, which helped. And I had to wear special orthotics for a while, which actually I felt like made me worse in a way. Maybe I was just too old by the time I got the surgery, for my foot to really gain that shape that I had in my other foot. And then my left foot took a lot of beating because I used it for most stuff, right? So I stood on my left foot more. I didn't have as much pain. And then I started having problems in my left knee and my left ankle. And shoes were they said, oh, well, you got to go to these special shoe stores where they make shoes for you, like for old people or something. I don't know. I would go into these shoe stores and I'd be like, I'm not wearing any of these. I was like 21. But it was very difficult prior to surgery. Getting in a ski boot was almost impossible because I formed a curve in my tibia due to this change. So getting in a ski boot or wearing even a hiking boot was really uncomfortable. After the surgery, I could get into a ski boot, of course, still uncomfortable, but not as bad because I could move my ankle, right? But sure. Boots and hiking, and when I met Ryan, he's like a African bushman. He can walk for like days and not stop. And he doesn't understand foot pain. And I always think about, he'll say, oh, we're going to go on this backpacking trip for a week or whatever. And it's always the first thing I think of is my feet. If he says, oh, let's run a 5K, or the thought of running a marathon to me sounds like complete, utter torture. I think besides being pregnant, I couldn't think of another torture that would be worse. It would be running for a whole marathon because my feet have never been good enough to do it. And I always felt like shoes were they were my problem. I could never get them fitted right. Hiking boots. Ryan's always buying me all these in the past, expensive hiking boots. And I'd be like, they work for a while, but I'd always get a blister. And I would always get this foot fatigue. And I've heard you guys talk about this foot fatigue. And this is where Ryan and I differ in our hiking styles is I literally have to stop because my feet, they'll be blistered. And if they're not blistered, they're fatigued. I can't walk on them anymore. I don't have that shock absorption in my foot where I could just go on forever. And so that for me, my feet and fitting a proper shoe is always the first thing in my mind when I think of doing any physical activity.
So, I think the benefit of what you guys are doing, I know a few things that, guys have talked to me about. Now, I have not yet gone through your mapping and done this, the footbeds that you guys create. But I think my wife is probably a prime candidate for this, and we got to get it done because, it's a problem. As much as I'd like to take her on some of these hikes, she's just the foot pain in her one foot has been such an issue, and we've never taken the time to get just the best fitting boot. And we just kind of went with this boot, tried this boot. Well, we've already spent the money, and that's not working. But
actually, this was to get to one of your points you were saying about giving people that attention, even if they're just buying, let's say, a less expensive boot. Is that, like, if I go to REI, which is our, kind of outdoor store here where they have boots, and I go there, I mean, I'll get some attention, but I don't feel like anybody can really understand what my foot is doing. Right? They're just kind of...
They can't relate to because they have no formal education.
And they're like retail workers. They're looking at you like, I don't know. Do you have anything? I don't know. Just go walk on the little trail over there, and if it feels good, you can use this boot. And so I'm always just... And it costs a lot of money. And I don't feel like anybody actually is listening to what, and they're not understanding my foot and my structure and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's a great service to be able to give people that attention, because that's going to make a huge difference in how they spend their money.
Exactly. I would agree with you too.
100% on that.
So do you guys get people like my wife who will come to you and have these kind of issues? And, you guys are able to kind of talk them through it and get them fitted for a boot that you guys think would work for her, or get them a custom footbed, or how does that work? How does the process go when somebody comes to you and has a problem?
Well, I'll start. Again, there's two sides to our business. We have our custom boot system side, and then we have I'm going to say, like Hillary said, the retail side of it, where we have guys just wanting to buy a boot. I'll describe one. I'll let James describe the other. We'll have guys call up. Joe Blow will call, and he said, I wanted to get some information on your boots. Just an example. And, I had problems with my heels slipping in the boot. And I get a little hot spot. Not necessarily a blister, I get a hot spot. And I'm going to go out west on this hunt. What do you think? What boot would you recommend for this trip? Before I go a step further with the guy, I ask him if he's had what the severity of that problem was. Sometimes it takes a little bit to open that can of worms up to get them to start divulging this information, because I truly believe they have a preconceived idea that they're walking into a boot retailer.
Right.
Okay? So they have a preconceived idea when they call that they've kind of got the defensive mode up, that they're just going to get pawned a pair of boots.
Sure.
And then once we get that can of worms opened up, they divulge some information. They realize we're really there to help. We help guide them. Are they really a custom boot system candidate? Is that going to be their best avenue?
Mm-hmm.
Or by listening to them talk about the basics of their foot. I'm not diagnosing. Do you think you have a flat foot? Do you think you have an arch? Do you think you have a high arch? Do you have a wide forefoot? Do your laces come together when you tie your boot up? That information from our years of experience, we can help a retail customer get a much better fit than they would if they jumped on some of these online hunting sites and bought a pair of boots, or called the latest, greatest boot brand and bought that boot and found out that it wasn't right. So that's really the benefit to our retail side. James, explain the custom side, Tim, how you would define that clientele calling in.
Well, the person that calls in let's say you have the guy that calls in that has had some issues. And this happens a lot. A guy's, he's purchased 5 or 6 different types of boots. The latest and greatest thing, like Steven just talked about, And for one reason or another, it wasn't comfortable. He got blisters. Say he had a terrible bunion on his foot, something like that. This process is much more scientific and it's much more involved. And essentially, a person purchases a mapping kit, which is a tool. It's something that we use, to look at the actual shape of the foot, the pattern of the bottom surface of their foot. And because we've got this type of education, we can look at, based on this foot, or do we need more of a inflared type of last? That's the shape of it. Maybe it's something where we need a wider type of foot or boot last. Whatever it is, we figure that out so that and we put everything in a chart. This is all documented in a chart for later use for a person. Once we have all this information down, we sit here and go over in a consultation, and we ask them a lot of the other questions as to, what has been cooking. A lot of times people call in, and we encourage them, especially on our website, you need to call in so that we can go over the process with you. And so that in doing that, we can't remember everybody, so we have to do the consultation, and they have an opportunity to do a lot of talking to us about some of their issues that they have. When it comes down to it, the common goal is this. We're fitting them with the correct boot, the correct size. We make those types of modifications to the boot to ensure the best of our ability that the fit is as total contact as it possibly can be. And that total contact fit is the type of fit that is going to keep that foot from shuffling around this way or that way. And that type of fit, utilizing the right type of boot, sole, midsole, is going to make them have as little fatigue as possible. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Now, what about I know everybody's kind of got their own idea of what works best for them. Take the fit away from it even. Some guys really like a real, a stiffer shank to their boot. Maybe you could kind of go into a little bit about that for those that haven't worn a real stiff boot versus, something that doesn't have any shank to it at all. I'm not really, a real stiff shank fan, but just the kind of hunts I do, I think they're a little more conducive to me having a little bit softer boot. So maybe you could go into the differences there.
I would say that as a whole, how stiff is stiff, Ryan? What do you? Because there's different levels of stiffness. Like,
well,
what do you mean? I mean, because there's a backpacking, and there's backpack. Full-on cramp-on is like super ultra stiff.
Like you're having a hard time bending that thing at all. Am I correct?
Okay.
Yeah.
Then you have your backpacking that actually does still have that torsional stability, but there is some flexing to it. More flex. Then you have more of a trekking, hiking category that has a nice shank, but you can definitely bend it at the ball of the foot. And then you get to your ultra soft, which are like your soft, Solomon speed hunting shoes and that type of series. So I just wanted to be sure we defined that before we started giving you misled somebody.
Yeah. I mean, I think, for the average guy, we're not toe picking into, well, for the average hunter, I guess, out west, we're not typically toe picking into rock and climbing straight up, but we're doing a lot of hiking, a lot of trail walks. We're putting on some miles, and for me, a real stiff boot just doesn't really fit. It just doesn't feel right for me. It's kind of a clunk versus a little bit of a roll and all that. Is that pretty typical? I mean, Now I say that there's certain hunts that, in the steeper country, I do like a little bit stiffer boot versus if I'm just bombing through country and really covering country early season and it's not maybe the steepest country, I like more of a softer sole to that boot. So is that pretty typical? I mean,
well, yes and no, but I think you have to have I think you have to have an understanding of the person's foot type before you would ever suggestively tell somebody what boot to jump into. Mm-hmm. It's just like your wife. I mean, she has an underlying problem, and what is going to work for her on mild rolling country isn't going to work for a guy or a gal that doesn't have that. Right. She may require a much stiffer boot for that milder terrain because of these underlying issues. Whereas a gentleman or a guy that's going out on a hunt that just has never had any foot issues, he can get away with a 40-pound pack and a trekking last, even in some tough country in Colorado or, all this stuff. So, again, it goes back to, I think, foot type, some foot indicators, issues that they've had. And, my gut feeling on a lot of this stuff that we see, the more backpacking lasts just under the alpine category seems to be where, I don't know, would you say 80%? Probably 80% of our business is.
Yeah.
Just simply because those guys are carrying a lot of their weight out themselves on their back. And if you get into a foot gear that doesn't have enough stability and you throw that load on your back, guess what happens to the sole of the shoe? It collapses under load. If it collapses under load, then the foot's going through motion, and then you heat up and you start blistering.
And you get a lot of foot fatigue, I think, is what I tend to notice when it's collapsing. I can definitely feel a lot more of that, a lot more tension in the bottoms of my feet when I'm using maybe a boot that is just really soft soled, like a tennis shoe or whatever. I've made that mistake more than once where I've packed a heavy load with just a running shoe and I've regretted it afterwards.
Absolutely, and you know what? The problem with that is that heel comes down and makes contact with the ground, kaboom, right? And if you don't have that all figured out with either a boot or a footbed of some sort, it's the domino effect or the chain reaction. You hit with the heel, it hits to the ankle, it goes to the knee, it goes to the back, it goes to the hip, and as you go long enough, it starts going other places. So.
Yeah, so that's where this whole idea of how important your feet are for the rest of your body. If your feet are really good, I guess, like in my situation, the first thing I look at is people's feet. Is that weird or what? Like, I look at their feet because I go, oh, they have good feet, or oh, they have high arches, or because that was my problem area. And because I do a treatment too where I deal with people's structural bodies. So by looking at their feet and looking how their gait and looking how their stance is, I can see a whole lot about what their patterns are going to be throughout their entire body.
Sure.
Because that whole idea, right? We're built kind of like a house, or a structure where we have a lot of weight on top, being Homo sapiens, and our foundations are just as important are very important for all that stability. It
does. It's a chain reaction. I mean, you're just compounding the problem. You need to look at that foot as a leaf spring. Think about it. Take a leaf spring in the back of the truck, flip it over upside down. Mm-hmm. Now you're visualizing an arch, right?
Right.
Throw your pack on and throw 70, 80 pounds in it. What's going to happen? It's going to flatten out.
Right.
If it's out in the foundation that you're just talking about, Hillary, flexes, then your foot's flexing. If your foot's flexing, then you're going through abnormal ranges of motion. And it's not just blistering, it's the tendons and the ligaments are being pulled. Then it comes up into your knees. Well, why do you think, when we do these consults and we talk to these guys about the importance of really utilizing trekking poles to offload, and our father's a study guy. He'll research stuff to the 10th degree, and then he'll bring them down here and say, check this out, guys. And they were a lot of these European backpackers have written, these orthopedists have written these studies, and it's phenomenal how trekking poles actually offload the back, the hip, and the lower extremities with and without a pack.
It's dispersing the force, right?
Yep, it sure does.
Yeah, I've noticed that a lot. In my younger years, I was always always adamant about. I was laughing at guys that had their trekking poles. I'd kind of make fun of them with their shiny new trekking poles coming out of REI and hitting the mountain. But man, that was just arrogance on my part, because I tell you what,
you think you're never going to get older and have
problems.
Well,
now I don't go on any hike without trekking poles. I don't care what it is, if it's a short one, long one. I've got trekking poles, and especially on a hunt, because you're right. It is night and day when you're climbing up a mountain, or you're just coming down a mountain with all that weight on. It's such a huge difference, and you notice it drastically. Just in the wear and tear on your legs and your feet, makes a really big difference. Now you guys have just come out with your own boot. I wanted to get into that. It seems to be a pretty good buzz out there with the boot from Lathrop & Sons.
I think it's been awesome. This has been one hell of an experience. It really has. I look back at this, Ryan, I'm going to say my 2 cents and then James can hop in here, but this is really what our whole journey, and I'm talking back 20 years doing the orthotics, what it was meant for. This moment, this time that we're talking, I mean, we just unveiled this stuff, Tuesday? It was Tuesday.
Yeah. Tuesday at 5.
Yeah, Tuesday at 5. And I told James, I said, this literally changes not who we are, but this is a new chapter, man. This is it. I mean, we've been fitting all these different boots to help people with their fit. It was time for us to take all that understanding, all these custom boot systems we've done, dealing with all the problems, taking boots from a customer that just spent $400 because somebody on Instagram or told him, hey, this is the boot that it's bad, you got to have it, and it killed him, and he wore them, and now he can't send them back, and he's calling us desperately to ask us to help him fit. It was that power and energy that was thrusted into this boot belt.
Got it.
And when we decided to do this project, we knew to stay where we were at in the market. This thing had to be right. We couldn't cut corners on anything. We had to use the most premium product. We had to make sure that the last that we built the boot on was going to be accommodating for a lot of different foot types, either through molding and footbed therapy or so on and so forth. That's what we built. We took our midsole, and this is really unique, and a lot of people don't know it, man. These companies, a lot of them utilize their own a midsole, okay?
Okay.
There's nothing wrong with that. It is a quick, fast way to build a pair of boots and sell them, okay? We took all of our information from using all these different boots and seeing how they affected all these different foot types. We had measurements and degrees of angles and so on and so forth. James and I committed to this project 110%. We had milled injection molds made proprietary to Lathrop & Sons for every size that we offer, so that fulcrum, the rock in that boot, was specific to that foot. There isn't anybody that I have seen that has got that detailed in the market, and that is why That midsole, we called it the rocker can midsole because it rocks very swiftly as soon as you unlock your knee. It's really exciting. It's really exciting.
Well, we're happy to kind of be a part of this week with you. We appreciate you guys taking the time to talk with us and stuff. We know this is like, gosh, life-changing, as you just said. So
well, I know
I'm happy we get to talk with you.
Yeah, the buzz, I think what lends so much credit to you guys is you guys have got such a long track record of being in the business. Like I mentioned, the podiatry business, your father, you've got all these years of seeing foot problems and issues. And, I know that you guys have worked with a lot of different brands, brands that that are, basically a great fit for certain folks.
That's right, man.
Quality brands.
Absolutely. And then now you've come out with your own. And I think that's where, there's such a good hype with this. And it just, there's a lot of expertise and thought behind this. And I can definitely tell. I've seen some videos on the new boot, and you guys, I can see your passion with the functionality of it and why. That's kind of the reason why. I mentioned before I'm really into gear, and I like to know, my gear is the absolute best. I don't want one piece of gear, faulty gear, to kind of set me back in the backcountry. I just put too much money, too much energy, too much thought into that time off in the fall. And like I mentioned, I think the boots is one piece of gear that you just cannot skimp on. You don't want to put. You just don't want to kind of not think through your footwear. I think it's one of the things, especially younger guys, are going to learn. I've made mistakes, and I'm sure all of us have. And I think getting it right, well before the season starts, and getting some miles on it, and really figuring out the best boot, which is what you guys are doing for folks, is super key to creating a happy hunter in the fall up there in the mountains. So.
Did you guys name your boot and where people can find it?
Yeah, we have the Mountain Hunter Elite, and we have the Mountain Hunter, and they're on LathropandSons.com.
Perfect.
You can reach us at 618-544-8782, and James and I are here to try to answer any question anyone's got.
Yeah,
happy to help.
And again, like I mentioned before, I've got some folks that have gotten in touch with you in the past, and you guys have been doing this a while. But I've heard nothing but good things. Everybody said that you just the fact that you guys are willing to take the time and talk with them and try to figure out an issue that they've had and really try to get them into the perfect boot for their foot. I've heard it many times. No 2 feet are the same, and I've noticed that with my wife especially. I fortunately have some pretty. I've been blessed with some good feet. I just don't have blister issues like a lot of my buddies do.
Yeah, my feet are definitely not the same. They're like, I tell people when I was going down the, I think of like a production line and I was getting ready to be born, they realized I didn't have any feet. So they just threw 2 separate feet on me. And then, whoop, there she went. So I'm like, I'm unique. I was like, it was an afterthought kind of deal, right?
Yeah, we'll be able to help you. There's no doubt about it. We just got to sit down and pick the right boot.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, that's exciting. So we're gonna do that and go through the process and get her hiking and hopefully keeping up a little bit. Now she's just got to get into the training. I don't know what her excuse is going to be once she has perfect boots, but she'll find something.
Yeah. Have you guys been working on this model? Like, how long did it take you from kind of the beginning till this week?
2015.
Wow.
So a couple years there, huh? Or a year and a half.
So we could have done what a lot of guys do or a lot of companies do.
Yeah.
Thrown a midsole on and an outsole. Yeah, that looks cool, and put your name on it and sell it, right?
Yeah.
We could. That's called the shortcut.
Yep. No kidding.
When did we start Lathrop and Sons? That's really the answer.
That's been over 15 years.
15 years in the making. So there you go.
Sometimes people have dreams in their life and they never do it because they're too busy. You guys sound like you were busy working and going through your life, and
Sure, we were absolutely 100%.
Sometimes you don't ever actually act on a dream because you're busy and you maybe don't take the time, or you don't feel like you have the outlet or the money or whatever it is to do it. And I think it's so cool to see people take something from a thought and make it reality. And that's what I love.
Well, you touched on something, and I do want to say this. We've been blessed. We've been very blessed to have be surrounded by people that really believe in us, and they've helped us out. And I just want to, those people know who they are, and I just want to thank them for that.
Yeah, there's really some great people
without
in the
them
industry.
That, we may not, it may have taken us a lot longer. So.
Yeah. I really like the business model that you guys have created here, and I think it was a definite need. There's definitely a niche out there that you guys have filled with the custom and fitting guys with the right boots. And I know I talk a lot about hunters and how they're going to benefit, but gosh, don't you think that this is something that this is going to benefit other folks as well? Just random backpackers and hikers and anybody that gets out there and enjoys time in the mountains.
Absolutely. And we you guys have got to let us get back on here with you, because we need to dive into some other things, because you realize these people we're all going out west to do this stuff, and we all go grind it with a pack on, but people are working out too, and that's something we'll have to touch on.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Fun, but before I let you go, I got to get one story out of you. I want to hear a good hunting story from you guys before we let you off. Let's go with that.
So we come back from, what year was that? It was Colorado.
What are you talking about?
Oh, you know what it is, buddy boy. Okay, we had been to Colorado on our elk hunt. We came home. I'd missed a bull that year. Okay. We came back empty-handed, okay?
Should have killed a couple.
Should have killed a couple. We came back empty-handed. And it is time to get back to work, because when you leave a boot business, you've got a couple part-time guys helping us. They're great dudes, firemen, school teachers in the summer, great group of guys helping us. We usually carry a sat phone so we could call in at noon and kind of check. So we come back, we're busy, we get unburied.
We decided to take some time off to whitetail hunt the rut had started and it was getting really good.
Starting to heat up. But you get a magic time, and there's probably just like the elk, you get, you got your peak time, but then there's usually, 3 or 4 days they just go absolutely ballistic, and then it kind of chills out, and then they're good again, and then,
Yep.
Well, that's kind of what was going on. So we decided, you know what, we're going to take this time, we're going to put something down. Now, one of the particular farms that we've got, I had spent a couple years hunting this specific area, and I was chasing this hog buck, and he stayed down in this drainage, and he'd come up and down and up and down. And I noticed to the right, occasionally, these bucks would come in, these does would bed up at about 8 o'clock, about 9:30 or 10, these bucks would come in and boom, hit these does, and they'd run. These does would just scatter, right? And it was like he'd harass them, they'd bust out, they'd come scattering underneath me, but I was on the other side of this old logging road, and I kept looking at this old cedar tree in there, and I thought, yeah, it's like 50 yards away. God, every one of these bucks that has come through here, there's really no trail there, but they end up standing in front of this tree, as crazy as it sounds. This is a true story. So the next year, I go in there, and I hang this stand. It's drizzling rain. I hang that stand, and I'm a day late and $1 short, and it calmed down. The does weren't quite as hot as they were. We come back from this elk hunt now, okay? That was the year before this. We come back from this elk hunt. He says, I'll be out at the house before daylight, and he's standing there, and we've got our first cold snap. It's 25 degrees. I come out of my house into the garage, and we're having our coffee. Being my little brother, Ryan, he's about a year younger than you, he looks at me and he says, kind of sheepishly, hey, you got a stocking cap I can borrow? I left mine at the house. And I just smiled at him great big, and I said, yes, I got a stocking cap for you. You know what he says to me? Give me a lucky one. I said, okay, and I reached over and I threw him a stocking cap. Where are you going to hunt? I said, well, I'm going to hunt south of the house here. I'm going to get in a tree stand called the Big White Oak, and I climbed up into it, and it's just a natural funnel transition. The timing was right for these big 4.5-year-old bucks, 5.5, to get up and start cruising if they hadn't picked a hot doe up yet. And he said, where do you think I ought to go? And I said, I don't know. I'd go down to such and such. And he goes, what about going up and sitting up on top of that ridge? And I said, yeah, that'd be a great spot. The timing's right. So he climbs up in there. It's probably, what time was it?
About 7:15.
I get a text message. You're not going to believe this. I just killed the biggest buck of my life. I said, what? I just killed, I'm serious, Stephen. This thing's got points going everywhere. And I
said it was a 200 in.
I said, you have got to be kidding me. And he goes, I'm not kidding you. Now, you have to understand, Ryan, we live in country, those kind of deer exist, okay?
Right.
They get shot during every year in our county. There's some 200s that get shot. And I'm sitting here going, you got to be kidding me. And now I'm sitting here saying, well, just hang loose for a while. I'm going to sit here thinking maybe, I could get a whack at something because it's really good this morning. I'd already seen a couple of small bucks cruise through. And I finally couldn't take it anymore. He's like, I'm getting down. He comes to the house, and he said, I'm up at your house now. And I'm thinking, you know what, this is going to be worth it. So I text one of my buddies and tell him James shot a smoker. He says he's killed it. He thinks he heard it went down. I come walking up, and I'm walking out of the woods, and I look up, and there's my brother walking at me. He's not at my house. He's so excited. He's walking down to the field to me, and I look up at this guy. He's got that ridiculous frickin' hat on his index finger, spinning it in a circle, smiling with his shit-eating grin, spinning it, and he walks up and he gives me this hellacious bear hug, and he says, you're not going to believe this. Come to find out, we go in there, and he had just pinwheeled this deer. It quartered away. He shot this buck sitting down. You tell him the story. It's your buck.
All right, so I'm sitting in this stand, and I had 3 does come in from the west side of this field, and they come through this thicket of saplings up on top of the hill. And Steven said earlier, they'd logged this area out sometime earlier, and things have grown up. So these does come through there, crossed right out in front of me, and went back about 20 yards and popped out on this logging road over there. And they were just standing there. And I had a little buck, 1.5 old, come through there to the right, dropped down the ridge, and just went on to the east, going downhill. So the cedar tree is positioned on the downhill side of this hill, and so your cutout area for your kill zone, you're only, 12 feet off the ground. That's basically what it is. But you're in a cedar tree, and you got all this coverage around you. So I'm sitting there. You feel like you're sticking out, really, because you're that low, but you really aren't. Right. And all of a sudden, I look up, and I heard a grunt, very soft grunt. And I look up, and I see legs coming. That's all I could see there for a second. And then all of a sudden, I look up there, and I see this rack. And at first, looking through all these saplings, I really couldn't tell what the hell it was at first because there's so many saplings going through there. But I saw, the spread, and I thought, it doesn't look like it's that big. Buck ended up being 16 inches wide. And anyhow, he come in, and when he hit about 40 yards, I could see what he was, and I thought, oh, shit. Excuse me. Oh, my. I draw that bow back because I couldn't get up. I couldn't stand up in time. He was coming in, and he ended up stopping about 12 yards to me, quartering towards me, and a little bit of a depression there. And I am sitting on my can. I got this bow drawn back, and this buck is looking underneath me at these does out on this logging run. He's basically coming through, scent checking everything. Right. And he just was staring at these does, and he wasn't doing anything. I had previously practiced a technique that I heard one of our patients tell me. He used to shoot with a guy who used to hold his bow back 30 or 40 seconds just to practice.
Right.
And I started doing this, and I'm glad I did, because I ended up holding that bow back. If it had to have been past 40, 45 seconds. And I'll tell you what, it was getting so damn bad. I took that bow, and I was resting the limb on my leg.
Oh, no.
And all I could think about was, James, if you let this bow down, you're screwed.
It's over.
You're never going to get it back. You know, you hear me? I mean, it was pretty intense, and I thought, you've got the biggest buck you've ever had sitting right there. You got to hold it back.
You got to fight through
and a few seconds go by, and the grace of God, this deer takes 2 or 3 steps up into the kill zone, and he turned and started walking almost straight away from me. He hit about 30 yards, and I put that pin right on his left side, and I shot, and I hit him perfectly right in front of that left ham, and it drove that arrow right over into the off shoulder on the other side. He took off, veered off towards the north, and I heard what sounded like rustling of leaves and all that, and that went quiet. I just remember I pulled out. And this is back when, and I'm kind of I guess I'm a little tightwad when it comes to thumbs. I had one of these little flip-up thumbs. You know, you got to hit the number 2 or 3 times to get to the right letter.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah.
I'm trying to type this message to my brother. I just shot a 200-inch deer. I'm not kidding you. And when I hit send, it wouldn't go out. I didn't have enough signal for it to go out. So I had to sit there on my hands for a while. Anyhow, he ended up scoring 174 and 5/8.
Wow.
It's an amazing animal. It had drop tines and Fort G2s and Fort G3s and just mass and just it's everything you'd ever want in a Midwest hardwood whitetail. I mean, that was just an awesome deal.
So it was really special. It was a lot of fun, and
sounds like it. Yeah, and the lucky hat too.
It's a true story.
I'm guessing you might have wore that hat a couple hunts after that too.
No, I have that hat. It hasn't brought me quite that kind of luck.
Oh, but it did once, and I can imagine you wouldn't want to get rid of it. That's
no,
awesome. Man, good story.
It's cool. We have a lot of fun bow hunting. That's our passion.
Absolutely. Man, that's awesome. Great story. Love it. Well, again, guys, thanks for coming on. I really enjoyed the conversation. I think a lot of people are going to get a lot out of this. You know, I love the information. I love the knowledge. Getting it from a couple guys that have so much expertise in the field. I just think, I can't reiterate enough how important it is to, just focus on the gear that's going to matter the most when you're making an investment. And like I mentioned many times, boots are one of them. Boots are probably one of the most important, if not the most. And you guys, gave a bunch of great information today, and hopefully a lot of our listeners get something out of it. So again, thanks for coming on, guys.
All right. Thanks for both of you for having us. We appreciate it.
Hey folks, thanks for listening to the Hunt Harvest Health podcast. If you enjoyed the podcast, please leave us a review on iTunes or Stitcher. Visit our website at huntharvesthealth.com for more podcast stories and recipes. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Hunt Harvest Health. You can also message me at StHealthy Hunter, that's STH, and I will be more than happy to answer any questions you might have. Also tag your photos Hunt Harvest Health or Get Stealthy, as we enjoy seeing what you guys are doing as well.